What's up, everybody? Andrew Mahone here, going over my 9th place Dallas Regional Expanded Buzzwole Lycanroc deck list. This was a great deck for the Dallas Regional Championships. It outperformed my expectations 1,000 times over. I loved playing this deck in expanded format, and the list that I ended up on is pretty unique, as you will see. It will also be very familiar to anybody who played this deck in standard format. Hey, what's up, Darium? I'm going over the deck profile that I just finished 9th at Dallas with. What are you up to?
9th?
Ninth,
That's
yep.
First loser.
Just first loser, yep. I had 34 match points, bubbled out of cut. Not much I could do about that. My resistance was pretty bad. Yep. Yeah, I had like 30% of resistance. There was no chance of me making top 8 with that. But I was the only person with 34 points to miss, so a little bit of a bummer there, but that's fine. I mean, considering that I was just excited that I was, the only player in the top 16 to have a fighting deck like this. Very unique list, like I had said previously, and pretty revolutionary in the fact that I am not actually playing any versus Seeker in this deck whatsoever. So that was a big surprise to a lot of my opponents. I was getting Getsist all over the place for nothing or one card. Getsist was really bad against this deck when my opponents would try to play it for the most part. And that paid off really well. I had a much better Seismitoad matchup against the Seismitoad decks and things like that I faced because I have just a high supporter count in this list. And this deck was a lot of fun to play. So I'm going to go over why in the world I decided to play this kind of crazy, juiced up standard deck at an expanded tournament and how it ended up going well for me. So my list has 2 Buzzwole GX and 1 Lycanroc EX. I also play a 2-2 Lycanroc GX split. I play 1 copy of Sudowoodo, 1 copy of Tapu Lele, a 1-1 Carbink Break Line, and a 1-2 Octillery Line. So that's it for the Pokemon. There are not a ton of attackers in this list. We're going to set Carbink like that. So here we are with my Buzzwole list, and like I said, there are not a lot of Pokemon in here. In fact, my attacker lines are pretty thin. In standard, I had cut the 4th Buzzwole to 3 Buzzwole, and I was playing 3 Buzzwole and maybe 1 copy of Zygarde EX. And in the expanded list, as you can see, I've cut even further to just 2 copies of Buzzwole and 1 copy of Lucario EX. Now, this is fine. We do have rescue stretchers, so we do have the ability to get these back, but these 3 here are kind of your main basic attackers. But also, Lycanroc is a main primary attacker too, so it's not that bad. You might think, like, wow, Andrew, you're only playing 3 attackers in that deck. That's not true. I am playing 5 attackers in this deck because Lycanroc does a lot of heavy lifting, especially in expanded format, where many of your opponents are going to be playing Zoroark decks. So the reason why I've decided to trim the Buzzwole down all the way to only 2 copies of Buzzwole is because Buzzwole gets foul played really bad. Now, foul play Zoroark is that promo Zoroark is also, there's the secret rare Zoroark. There's a lot of different versions of the foul play Zoroark. But anyways, the foul play Zoroark can copy any of Buzzwole's attacks for just a double colorless energy. So if I go in turn 1 with Jet Punch and maybe get a turn 1 knockout on a Zorua with Jet Punch, my opponent can easily Ultra Ball for foul play Zoroark, put a DCE on it, and Absorption GX me for knockout. They don't even need the Choice Band to Knuckle Impact me. Now, if they do have the Choice Band, then they can Knuckle Impact me for knockout. It's just all bad for Buzzwole when facing a foul play Zoroark. So Buzzwole was actually not a very optimal starter, and was really tough to play in the expanded event because of how many lists were playing the foul play Zoroark. Now, don't get me wrong, Buzzwole GX is a force to be reckoned with. I took tons and tons of prizes with Knuckle Impact, but you had to play him carefully, and you had to play him sparingly, and you had to make sure that when you did play your Buzzwole, that he was in the clear, or maybe your opponent's field was clear of Zoruas, that they were not going to be able to whip up a foul play Zoroark out of nowhere. So Buzzwole was more difficult to play in expanded than he is in standard, but still very good. Jet Punch is excellent for being able to knock out Zoruas Zarus early, put pressure onto your opponent's side of the field, weaken up the opponent's Pokemon so that then you can finish them off with your other powerful attackers too. Buzzwole GX is still a force to be reckoned with, but like I said, have to play him sparingly just because of that foul play. Now, at first, I was playing a Zygarde EX as the partner for Buzzwole, but the problem with that was that Zygarde EX is just weak to Golisopod, and Golisopod in expanded format is one of the most popular partners for Zoroark decks. So it was a problem because my Buzzwoles could be foul played by Golisopod, and my Zygarde could just be knocked out in one hit by Golisopod, as could my Lycanroc. So I didn't really have any sort of valid strategy versus that deck. Here's where Lucario EX comes in. Golisopod variants do not play their own Skyfield typically. So, they don't really have any options for one-hit KOing my Pokemon outside of foul play on Buzzwole or foul play, or, they can actually knock out my Lycanrocs with first impression. So, Lucario EX is great because he can knock out Zoroark GXs in one hit with Corkscrew Smash or Somersault Kick. Corkscrew Smash, if I have a strong and a choice band, will do a perfect 110 times 2, 220, enough to knock out a Zoroark GX, and cannot be foul played in return. If my opponent tries to foul play Lucario EX, the most they're going to do is 100 damage with Somersault Kick, and Lucario does not care about getting Somersault Kicked when he's getting ready to dish out another big one-hit knockout to a Zoroark GX. So Lucario EX was trading excellent for me all weekend, especially against the Golisopod Zoroark variant of Zoroark. So Lucario EX, a star in this deck because he can't be foul played. I was making the joke that he is actually just bad enough that he is not worth foul playing, and that's why Lucario EX is so good. You can't play cards that are too good or too powerful against foul play, or they will just get foul played themselves. So the one of Lucario EX was great for that. You can also use Lucario EX early versus the Lone Zoroark deck to pick off Zoruas early. You can go in with Missile Jab, and so long as you have Sudowoodo on the bench, you just got to hope that your opponent does not get the turn 2 Hex 180 knockout on your Lucario EX. That doesn't always happen, especially if you have Sudowoodo in play and you are picking off a Zorua, then it's not as easy for them to do that. And they can't come in with foul play and knock out the Lucario EX. So a lot of times Lucario EX is a good lead versus that deck. I will typically go in versus Lone Zoroark with Lucario EX as well as Lycanroc GX and try to kind of, get my board position in a place where I can trade favorably with them. Now, like I had said, against that deck, you want to really be careful that you're not getting foul played. You also want to really be careful that your Lycanroc's not getting foul played, because your opponent will copy Dangerous Rogue if you give them the opportunity to, which means that you pretty much have to play the entire game versus Zoroark decks with a 3-card bench. That's not that hard. We don't have that many Pokemon in the deck. You're going to want to have Sudowoodo out. You're going to want to have a Rockruff out, and you're going to want to have maybe Octillery or one other attacker. That's really it. And you have one attacker in the active position, one on the bench, Sudowoodo, and Octillery. That's all you really need. So, it's not hard to keep your bench pared down. And so long as your bench is at 3 when you are actually out there with Lycanroc swinging away, you're usually safe, especially, unless your opponent, of course, gets the Hex, Choice Band, 180 knockout. Not always easy for them to do, especially when you're taking out their Zoruas early, when you're taking out their Zoroark GXs early. That's less trade that they have at their disposal, making it more difficult for them to pull off those Hex plays. Lycanroc GX was a star all weekend, just being able to pull up your opponent's Pokemon on their side of the field, absolutely amazing. The ability to pull off Dangerous Rogue GX out of nowhere in expanded format is just as good in expanded as it is in standard. Lycanroc's also excellent just for operating under item lock. So I had a lot of games versus Seismitoad. You can Sycamore, draw into things, and then also bring up stuff on your opponent's bench, knock it out. Great against Trevenant, being able to break that item lock. Actually was also great against the Shock Lock deck that I played against. Had a tough loss to that, but Lycanroc was the only reason I had any chance versus it, because I could Bloodthirsty Eyes around my opponent's Stoutland and then Guzma to break the Paralyzed lock that this Stoutland Shock Lock deck was putting on me. Also, Corner put in a lot of work in expanded format. A lot of times versus stuff like Night March, your only option is to corner a Shaman early, hope they can't get out of it, then go in with a Lycanroc GX and try to take 4 prizes before they knock out your Lycanroc. Speaking of the Night March matchup, I did play against 2 Night Marches. I went 1-1 versus it. It's not a great matchup, but you can see that I have not teched for it whatsoever, and I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, versus Night March, even if you're playing techs, even if you're playing an Oricorio, even if you're playing a Karen, I mean, you can't really play Karen in this list because I'm not playing versus Seeker, so that doesn't really work. But the strategy stays the same. The main strategy is to go in with the turn 2 Lycanroc GX, try to Dangerous Rogue a Shaman or a Zoroark GX, then just hope that your opponent cannot knock out that Lycanroc that next turn. So long as the opponent misses 1 knockout on the Lycanroc, you're usually in the clear to be able to just trade evenly with them for the rest of the game, finish the game off on a Shaman or something like that, and the game is yours. If they try not to set up Zoroark versus you, that just makes them much more susceptible to cards like N. At the end of the day, I couldn't really justify playing Oricorio since much of my deck is weak to Psychic. So it was difficult to consistently go in with Lycanroc GX, get them to dump, 9 Pokemon in the discard pile or whatever they need, and then use Oricorio effectively at the end of the game. I wasn't usually able to use Oricorio effectively, even with 9 Pokemon in the discard pile. I'm only knocking out 1 Pumpkaboo and placing maybe 30 on something else. Yes, I could probably Jet Punch that, but there are just a lot, a good Night March player is not going to allow you to really utilize Oricorio. So I decided just to go in with the Lycanroc strategy. It worked pretty often. In day 2, I actually had a very close series with a Night March player, went down to game 3, and my opponent actually Getsis me. It was the only time Getsis worked the whole tournament for my opponents, and I had 2 Ultra Balls and no supporters in my hand, and my opponent got both Ultra Balls out of my hand, so I could not go grab my Lele to get the game started, and my opponent ended up donking me very quickly. So the Lycanroc's excellent. This is your strategy versus Night March. Yeah, I mean, you use Lycanroc versus almost every single deck. It's great for knocking out Zoroark, so long as you keep your bench, managed for the most part. You can knock out Zoroarks, make it very hard for them to hex and knock you out in return. They need the Choice Band, they need the 8 Pokemon, especially with you countering their stadiums constantly, knocking out their Zoroarks. It's very difficult for them to deal with Lycanroc. So Claw Slash and Dangerous Rogue, both very good against Zoroark decks. Play 1 copy of Tapu Lele GX. It's just great for turning those Ultra Balls into supporter search cards on the first turn of the game. You really want to have the ability to Wonder Tag. Just makes the deck that much more consistent. But I am playing a ton of supporters in here, so we don't need 2 copies of Tapu Lele. Also, there's not a lot of bench space. By the time you've benched your Rockruffs, your attackers, maybe a Carbink, an Octillery, a Sudowoodo, not a lot of space for a second Tapu Lele. Plus, we're playing computer search in here, so I don't really mind taking the little bit of hit from not playing 2 Tapu Lele. We have computer search. We have plenty of searchability in here. And Tapu Lele just is a nice option to turn those Ultra Balls into supporter cards. Gives you a little more reach for your supporters. Since we don't play Versus Seeker, you have to have something that allows you to be a little selective with the supporter you'd like for turn. And the one of Tapu Lele helps us do that. Now, another real star of this list is the Carbink Break. Now, Carbink Break was kind of a late addition to my deck, and I loved every bit of it. This is the reason I was able to beat Toad decks. This thing allows me to beat Wailord as well, Stall decks, Sylveon decks. Carbink makes those matchups great matchups. If you take a look at this Carbink here, has Safeguard, so it prevents all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon EX. That means Seismitoad. Seismitoad Quaking Punches this thing, and it glances right off. So the only strategy that Seismitoad, Lasers, Zoroark can do versus a Carbink is to try and put it to sleep. Now, Carbink Break has 110 hit points, which is a great amount of hit points for a basic non-EX to have, and when they can only be damaged by lasers. Now, your opponent could bring out a Zoroark GX to knock it out, but that's pretty much a risky play because then you're just going to be able to play your own max elixirs and knock out the Zoroark right away. So they have to try and laser it, forces them to waste resources while you get to accelerate energy to your Lycanrocs, to your Buzzwoles, without really having to play any items. So Carbink was great for that. Carbink is also just great with that Diamond Gift attack. Allows you to to charge 2 energy cards from your discard pile to one of your fighting Pokemon. That means strong energy. You can charge strong energy from the discard pile to your Buzzwoles. Actually had a play versus Gardevoir GX where I softened up a Gardevoir GX with Carbink Break and a Choice Band. Diamond Gifted. I had 2 Strongs on a Lycanroc, charged 2 more Strongs. My opponent whiffed the Guzma and was able to finish off the Gardevoir with a 4-strong Claw Slash for 190. So was able to get all 4 Strongs in play with the Carbink Break. Carbink Break's also great because it can knock out with Zoruas. If you have your own strong energy, you do 40 damage to a Zorua, and you could Diamond Gift, accelerate your energy while also knocking out a Zorua, also while promoting a non-EX, non-GX. Carbink was just a star of the deck. Versus stall decks, versus Wailord, Carbink is their worst enemy. I mean, they have to remove the energy repeatedly from Carbink. You play 13 energy, that's plenty to be able to draw into, and if they remove them from Carbink, if you can find another one, attach it to Carbink, you're just accelerating the energy they just removed right back to the bench. And since we play 4 copies of Guzma, it's very hard for Carbink to get stalled out in the active position versus these stall decks. It's just a constant repetition of you Diamond Gift with Carbink, then you can easily retreat Carbink, and then blow something up with Buzzwole, retreat the Buzzwole back, and then just continue charging with Carbink. And it's very hard for stall decks to be able to beat this thing because of Carbink Break. So really loved that. Sudowoodo, completely necessary in this deck because of that Roadblock ability, searchable with Brooklet Hill. Very easy to get this out early. If you don't have Roadblock, you're going to have a very bad time against Zoroark decks. Roadblock is kind of your only hope versus those decks. You try to take out their Zoruas early, take out their Muck early, take out their Grimer early, hope that they're playing the Dark Grimer that's weak to your deck so that you can knock it out even easier. And then you set up Sudowoodo and just hope that they struggle to trade with you while you take easy one-hit knockouts on their Zoroarks. So Sudowoodo, great for putting Zoroark decks in compromising positions. Usually, I'm a big fan of Parallel City, but because of the pure aggressiveness of expanded format, I decided I had to go with 3 Brooklet Hill just to give my deck as much consistency as possible, to give my deck as much searchability as possible. Since, I'm not playing a broken draw engine like Zoroark, I had to have, the increased consistency so that I was getting the Pokemon I needed into play as soon as possible. So I couldn't really afford to play Parallel City, but Sudowoodo did the job just right. I am playing also a 2-1 Octillery line. Octillery is the juice that this deck needs in order to continue to draw aggressively late into the game to allow you to hit the card combinations you need, be it, Lycanroc and a Max Elixir or a Strong Energy and a Choice Band. Octillery helps you hit those things even after late game ends. I'm playing a 2-1 Octillery line since you don't usually need Octillery until the later half of the game, but having a Remoraid in play is essential so that even if you prize your Octillery, you can take it off the prizes, Ultra Ball for it, if it gets end away, whatever, and then you just slap it down, and now your deck is just total juice. You could just draw, whatever you need to draw with that Abyssal hand. I didn't like only 1 copy of Remoraid. I tried a 1-1 split for a while I was trying to fit in Night March techs, but I found that I wasn't getting the Octillery out nearly as often as I would have liked to. A 2-1 line really fixed that problem a lot. Of course, I would love a 2-2 line, but there's just not that much space in this deck, and I have to be a little greedy in some areas. The 2-1 Octillery's line is a compromise that I had to make. You can see how thin the Pokemon are already, but the 2-1, it was consistent. I liked it. I got Octillery out as much as I needed to, and it worked great throughout the course of the tournament. So let's move on to the supporter lines. I love the supporters in this deck. This is exactly the kind of deck I love to build. 4 copies of Professor Sycamore, 4 copies of N, 2 copies of Colress, and 4 copies of Guzma. And that's it. That's an expanded deck. And we are playing 4 Sycamore, 4 N, 4 Guzma, 2 Colress, and that is it for the supporters. Now, this was great. I never felt like I ran out of the supporters that I needed. I did have a couple of rough games where maybe I had to Sycamore, 2 Sycamore, or 3 Sycamore on the first turn of the game. That is rough, but in those scenarios, you just try to set up Octillery as fast as you can and really lean on your final Sycamore, the 2 Colress, and just, trying to draw as aggressively as you can, take early prizes. so that by the end of the game, maybe all you need is a Guzma for game. You don't really need the Sycamores, and you can work around that. But resource management is key. When you're not playing Versus Seeker, you need to be careful with what you're Ultra Balling away. You have to be careful, counting how many ends do I have left in deck? How many Guzma do I have left in deck? And things like that. You need to keep tabs on your supporters because you're not getting them back in any kind of way. So it does introduce a different kind of level of skill as far as resource management goes. Having to be able to keep count of the supporters that you have in your deck and make sure that you're not wasting them. But, this supporter count was absolutely fantastic at Dallas. Just having a live card in my hand almost at all times was amazing. I was very, very protected against Getsis. Just, not having to worry about my Versus Seekers getting Getsis away was absolutely amazing. I had, opponents try to Getsis me all the time, and I'd have like an 8 or 9 card hand. Getsis, they only got 1. And the look on my opponent's faces was very priceless when, I'd have a huge hand, Getsis for 0. I had opponents Getsis for 0 multiple times throughout the course of the weekend. So it was a great call. Not playing Versus Seeker for me really worked out. I don't regret it whatsoever. I drew excellent under item lock as well. Toad, really had no problems dealing with Toad. With 4 copies of Guzma, I was able to switch out of lasers very often. It was very hard for Toad to stick me because I always had live draw supporters in my hand. So, very good against Toad. Very good just against Getsis as well. And this deck is not a very, not a gimmicky kind of deck. I mean, really, this is just a straightforward beat stick deck. All you need to do in order to charge up these fighting Pokemon is just draw cards. So these cards allow you to draw cards. These cards allow you to target exactly what you want. And you don't need anything else. You don't need to play any tricky cards like Hex or Getsis or anything like that. You just try to out-trade with your opponent and hope that the pure aggressiveness of your fighting deck can overwhelm them. And in a lot of scenarios over the course of the past weekend, I was able to do just that. So that's it for the supporters. Moving on to the items. These are going to look very familiar as well. I played 4 copies of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of Max Elixir, 3 copies of Choice Band, 3 copies of Floatstone, 1 Rescue Stretcher, 1 Computer Search, and 3 Brooklet Hill. And that's it. No Versus Seekers. Didn't need them whatsoever. The Computer Search was an excellent addition to these items, just giving you that extra boost of consistency. Every time I saw Computer Search, it helped me complete the card combination that I needed, whether it be Choice Band or Strong Energy or just going to fetch Lycanroc to pull off an aggressive play. Computer Search was essential in this deck. I tried Scramble Switch at first in order to give me some, mobility options as far as my energy goes, but I didn't like Scramble Switch. This deck, expanded format is full of one-hit KOs, so you want to be able to just take those one-hit KOs back, and Computer Search allows you to do that. I also tried Dowsing Machine in order to give myself a 5th Max Elixir, but I found that more often than not, when I had Dowsing Machine, I needed to try and Dowsing Machine for an Ultra Ball or something like that. So Computer Search just really acting as a 5th Ultra Ball is very good for this deck. Loved Computer Search, wouldn't change it for the world. For Max Elixir, obviously great for juicing up your Pokemon, just like the standard version, giving them the energy they need to pull off their high energy attacks and be able to trade effectively. A lot of games will hinge on how many Max Elixirs you hit throughout the course of the game, but we do have Carbink Break, which is an excellent option to be able to lean on if you do happen to miss some Max Elixirs. You can always end your opponent to low. Carbink Break to charge up a Buzzwole out of nowhere, and then just hope that your opponent does not have Guzma for game, and then usually you will have Guzma for game on the following turn. 3 Brooklet Hill was amazing just for being able to get the turn 1 Sudowoodo. This was the primary reason I wanted to play more Brooklet Hills. I wanted to be able to get Sudowoodo on the first turn of the game as often as possible. I wanted to be able to set up my Rock Ruffs as well as early as possible so I could go for turn 2 Dangerous Rogue GXs very, very often to be able to knock out Zoroarks right as your opponent is starting to get their board position stabilized with their first Zoroark GX. I want to take it out. So Brooklet Hill allows you just to get those Rock Ruffs out there consistently. Loved that. The one of Rescue Stretcher is a little torn on it. I really don't want to play this card. I only play it because I have to. I would love to just play another copy of an Attacker or something like that, or a second Octillery, but the Rescue Stretcher is needed just to be able to give you some flexibility in case you have a rough Sycamore. You really want to be able to shuffle those Pokemon back into the deck. So Rescue Stretcher is kind of just a just-in-case card, but I do feel like you need it just in case, especially with as thin as the Pokemon lines are in this deck. Now, when looking for space, my friends and I were talking about potentially cutting down to only 2 floatstone in this deck, but you can't really do that. The floatstones are incredible in this list, just giving you mobility. You don't have any free retreaters, and Guzma is the primary card you're using in this deck to take prizes. You're Guzmaing things up and knocking them out. So you need a free retreater at all times. And since our list does not naturally have one, you're going to have to use floatstones. So 3 floatstones, perfect number. I had floatstone win me tons of games just because I would promote something without free retreat and then need to go max elixir and attach an energy to a bench Pokemon and promote for game. And I'd be able to play my supporter, hit the floatstone, hit the max elixir, and we'd have game right there. Choice band also, I'd considered swapping out choice bands for a number of things. Thought about maybe muscle band to help with Night March. Thought about fighting Fury Belt to help with Night March. But at the end of the day, the math on Choice Band was just too good, especially with Lucario EX being able to hit that one-hit knockout on a Zoroark for 2 energy. Too good. Lycanroc's damage is much better with 3 Choice Band, just because if your opponent only has 3 bench Pokemon, you can knock out Pokemon with 180. If you have a Choice Band, that's amazing as well. So the Choice Bands had to stay just to give you that extra damage output that you need to hit good numbers on your opponent's Pokemon. Really loved Choice Band in here too, and wouldn't swap that. Now, I did consider playing things like Focus Sash, but at the end of the day, I don't like that Focus Sash is a defensive card in an aggressive deck. Fighting Pokemon are supposed to be aggressive. They're supposed to take prizes as quickly as possible, and Focus Sash is basically saying, well, I'm trying to make my fighting deck a tank deck, and I don't like that because your opponent can actually just go grab their Field Blower and then make your tool attachment completely pointless, whereas Choice Band, you can always play it on the turn that you'd like to play it, and it's going to be a live card. It's going to add 30 damage on the turn you attach it, so I really do prefer Choice Band over Focus Sash and things like that. Now, we do play 9 fighting energy, 4 strongs. This is the standard for this archetype, and it works really well. Wouldn't cut anything here. I saw a Japanese list, I think, playing 8 fighting and a super rod. Don't like that. You really want to hit your max elixirs as consistently as possible, and I think 9 fighting is the lowest amount you can go while still doing that. So thank you all for watching this deck profile. Again, this is my 9th place list from the Dallas Regional Championships. Really excited about it. Excited that it's unique. It's kind of my own creation, and that I was able to take it to new levels here in expanded format, which is something that hasn't really been done with this archetype yet. So really excited about that as well. Thank you all for watching the video. Let me know what you guys think of this deck in the comments below. Make sure to check me out on Twitter as well at enjoyfriend, ENJOI friend. And thank you for everybody who encouraged me throughout the weekend at the Dallas Regional Championships. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a great day. Peace.